And welcome back. This is your man Warrior. This is one of my patrons' roster reviews. This dude in Habusakii is from Team Instinct, just like myself. So I really appreciate, obviously, someone who does not have to be one of my patrons being one of my patrons and supporting me. That is very, very kind. Now, he is obviously a whale. He's in Team Instinct, and he's been playing for like over 3 years. But he actually kind of just wanted a fresh set of eyes to look at his account and see what is it that he's kind of maybe overlooked or something he could develop, because he's kind of maxed out and really wants to know what it is out there in the game that he should be kind of taking a look at. And so I've got 4 zetas I think that you should focus on. They should be your next 4 zetas. And I think that there are 11 characters that you should finish developing. Those 11 characters and 4 zetas will probably take you all of 30 to 60 days max, probably less, just due to the fact that you're a whale. But these 11 characters, in my opinion, are really important. So we're going to start with the characters that impact fleet, and then after we go over those, we'll go over the rest of the characters, because there are 6 characters that do affect fleet that I feel like you really should finish off. So when we come to crew member, we see that you have done a ton of development on most of the crew, but when we come down to the bottom, there are in fact 6 characters down here that I do feel like you really should put in favorites and should finish off. And the first 2, which I would highly prioritize as number 1 and number 2, are Biston and Scarif Rebel Pathfinder. Now, you're in Team Instinct with me, and you know that one of the many defensive teams we do is a Biston on defense, but we've got to get him to 153 speed. The only way to do that is to max him and Scarif Rebel Pathfinder out. Now, Scarif Rebel Pathfinder will be extremely painful. He's like literally the worst gear in the entire game, especially for Carbantes. I think he requires like 11 or 13 or something crazy, but he also has more purple gear than any other character in the game. So very, very painful, but you definitely want to get Biston and Scarif Rebel Pathfinder, because Biston's Ewing is in fact very, very powerful. It provides a crap ton of turn meter to your ships and speeds your team up, and it would work better actually than the Ghost, which is what you're using. The Ghost is great, but Biston can go stealth and really provides extra turn meter, which can really change the tide, especially on defense when RNG plays a factor. So Scarif and Biston. The next 4 that are down here are young Lando Calrissian. You've got L3 already taken care of, so young Lando's the other half of that. And that ship is like one of the best reinforcement ships in the game, especially for defense. Again, this is another ship we use in the 4th slot of reinforcements on defense. So you're going to want to finish off young Lando Calrissian so you can max his abilities out. Really got to take them at least to gear 11 to unlock their abilities, but if you want to max out the ship's speed, you're going to want, and power of course, you're going to want to max out the characters to gear 12. And then of course in the same line with young Lando, you see Royal Guard. Royal Guard, you got Emperor Palpatine pretty max, but Royal Guard is important. Now the reason why I'm suggesting Royal Guard is because that's part of the Sith meta when it comes to ships, and we have a possibility of something Sith ship related coming down the pipeline. Actually, they've built out 4 or 5 Sith ships now, so really it's one of those things you probably don't want to neglect, because it'll come out of right field and all of a sudden boom, you'll have a bunch of developing you'll need to do. All right. Now, Sith ships, like I mentioned, there's 5, and I think that there is going to be an event that's going to require all of them, and your Emperor shuttle looks pretty good. Like I said, go ahead and develop out Royal Guard. Kind of unnecessary, but for ships it won't be. And then you can also purchase the Emperor shuttle now through shipments, so you can finish off that 6th and 7th star by using your daily earned crystals by purchasing the stars on that. TIE Advance looks good. Scimitar looks good. The B-28 Extinction class bomber and the Sith fighter, of course, are both needing their crew members leveled up. You've got Sith Marauder and Sith Assassin, both at gear 8 and 9, that you're going to have to take up to gear 12. In addition, both of those guys are Sith Empire and are going to really help you actually with the new Darth Revan meta. So when we take a quick look at your Sith Empire, obviously you're gearing up Darth Revan. He's #1 priority. And you've got HK-47 pretty good. Basilishan Fallen, surprisingly, you got her zated and completely maxed out. So good for you on that. I think Sith Trooper's probably sufficient right where he's at. And then Sith Marauder and Assassin are both kind of meh. You're going to have to work on them both for ships and for this team. And surprisingly, Sith Marauder is phenomenal. He does a ton of damage because of all the debuffs that are flying around, and he can lower his target's health permanently throughout the battle, and then he can also gain bonus turn meter and speed up pretty quickly. And so I would, of the two between Sith Marauder and Assassin, work on Sith Marauder first, not just for ships, but specifically for the Sith Empire team that you are going to potentially want to run in Arena. Sith Marauder is definitely an MVP. Now that we've talked about Scarif, Rebel Pathfinder, Bistan, Royal Guard, Sith Marauder, Sith Assassin, and Lando, we got those 6 individuals you need to develop for ships. We're going to go into non-ship related individuals or characters that I really think you should focus on. And obviously, Darth Revan is #1. He's at gear 11, so that's great. But gear 12 is a big deal. And then taking him not only to gear 12, but to get his gear 12 and gear 12 plus pieces. This is obviously a no-brainer, but 12 additional speed once he gets to gear 12 is make or break. Right now, my leaderboard is beating me off the line because they had all the gear 12 plus for their Darth Revan. I didn't, and so unfortunately, I'm about 12 speed slower than everybody on the leaderboard, which is crazy because I have the fastest speed set and I'm still losing the speed race. I do recommend you actually make Darth Revan fastest because of his second ability. His second special is called Insanity, and you want to inflict it on someone other than the leader. It's going to basically give a stun to them and the leader, and it absolutely 100% is going to work. This can't be copied, dispelled, or resisted, and the attack can't be evaded. So this is pretty awesome. And what fear is they miss their next turn. So it's basically kind of like a stagger / stun. They can't use abilities. They can't evade. And then it increases their cooldowns by 1. So him and the leader, whoever you target and the leader, are going to have cooldown increases. This is huge. And then fear expires when they take damage. So you don't actually want to hit them. You want to inflict fear and then kill someone. So like you could hit Bastila. If you were going mirror match, you could hit their Bastila Fallen, and then their Basilishan Fallen and their Revan would be out of commission. Then you could kill their HK-47. So anyway, it's just kind of a strategy thing, but definitely Insanity. You really want him to be able to use it first because it prevents them from really getting the jump on you. In addition to him, as we scroll down, there's a lot of other characters that you have really well developed, but there's a couple of gems in here that I really feel like you should work on. When we move over to Empire, I noticed a couple of individuals in here. The first is Range Trooper, and right next door to Range is Imperial Probe Droid. Now, we've talked about Royal Guard already, so technically there's 3 coming out of your Empire that I would work on, but Royal Guard we already discussed. Range Trooper is gear 10. He's literally 1 piece away from gear 11. I would definitely finish him off. He's a phenomenal complement to your Imperial Troopers and whatnot. He is amazing, and he's really going to help you in 5 versus 5 and 3 versus 3 Grand Arena when you're splitting up your characters. And in 3 versus 3, him being gear 10 versus gear 12 can make all the difference in the world as to whether you win or not. So Range Trooper is definitely one you want to finish off. Imperial Probe Droid is as well. I use Imperial Probe Droid with Emperor Palpatine. He helps cleanse buffs off, and with the target lock prevents them from getting additional buffs. And then he, when things go south, can blow up. And with Emperor Palpatine, you can do Emperor's Heal, which will actually trigger Imperial Probe Droid's health loss enough that he can blow up anytime he wants. So you've got an exit strategy with him. If you're having struggles with a particular team, you basically take an EP with Probe Droid, maybe Shore Trooper, or Grand Moff Tarkin, someone that can roll things up, like maybe Darth Vader. And then if things go south, you can immediately heal and blow the probe droid up. Make sure your probe droid is very, very, very healthy, as much health as you can, and then also tenacity, health and tenacity. You don't want them to stun it, because if they stun your probe droid, he's not going to blow up on anybody. He's just going to sit there, take damage, and die. So Emperor Palpatine, Darth Vader, Imperial probe droid are excellent, and there's a lot of other variants. Sometimes it's worth just taking in the probe droid with a couple others and blowing up random characters, even if you're not under Emperor Palpatine. So keep that in mind. Range Trooper, Imperial probe droid, and Royal Guard out of the Empire. But again, Royal Guard came out of your crew members that we were talking about. Now let's go ahead and move into one other faction I noticed that you probably want to finish. That's right, Ewoks. I know that your Ewoks were good enough for C-3PO, and so that's great. And you probably don't use Ewoks a ton, but Logray and Poplu really should come to Gear 12. It gives you the opportunity, if you decide to put some Gear 12 plus pieces, you can. This is really important specifically for Poplu. He needs the extra 12 speed, as modding him with speed is really, really difficult because he's already naturally slow. So even if you put a ton of speed on him, he's still a slow tank, and you really, 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 for a lot of counters, need him fast. Now, if you're not using them as a B team for Grand Arena, you should be. These guys, I take in Chief Chirpa, Wicket, and Poplu. I've taken in Tebow, Elder, and Logray before. I've used lots of differing combinations. These guys in 3 versus 3, 5 versus 3 Grand Arena are actually phenomenal, and there's only about 3 or 4 teams that the Ewoks struggle with, and they can still win, but they struggle. And so, like, Scoundrels, they can win, but sometimes it depends on the speeds. And so it's one of those things where you definitely want to level up these Ewoks. And you've got them Gear 12, and like I said, they're a solid team. In fact, if you level up Logray and Poplu, this could even be a defense team for Grand Arena for you if you needed a solid filler team. Now that we've talked about, the ship, the crew members, and the other characters, we talked about Scarif, Biston, Royal Guard, Sith Marauder, Assassin Lando, Revan, IPD, Range Trooper, and now Poplu and Logray. We're going to talk about the 4 Zetas that I feel like are the next 4 Zetas you should actually be considering, because you're kind of maxed out on what you've Zeted. The first is actually in here in Ewoks. It's Chief Chirpa. And Chief Chirpa Zeta just provides so much turn meter and potential for this team that it makes or breaks the team as to whether it can even be a counter team or whether it works well on offense or defense. So I would highly encourage Chief Chirpa, because the 1 Zeta affects the entire team. This really is a very strong Zeta for the team. The second Zeta I suggest is actually your T3, and I can't remember which one. This is it, Master Gearhead. He's got 2 uniques, and both can be Zeted. And the first one, combat logic, is decent, but this Master Gearhead, Zetaing this gives all of your droids the defense penetration, and it can make characters, other droids that don't hit really hard, and you'd be surprised on Grand Arena 3v3, 5v5 how much this guy changes the entire Mask of Battle. And I use him on defense. I use T3 a ton on defense in Grand Arena, and I use it with the Master Gearhead Zeta, and surprisingly under HK, I've got HK with T3, and you can throw in another tank like L3, or you could throw in another tank like Chopper, and weirdly enough, all these tanks and these characters that don't normally do well are hitting for a lot, and it's extremely difficult to kill, especially with L3, because she already naturally reheals everything health and protection wise. She goes all the time, and T3's there constantly reviving and healing the team's health and protection as well. And then HK's providing his leadership benefits to T3 and 4. Now with HK's lead changing and all of that, this isn't going to necessarily be the same in going forward in the future, but I would say that this T3 Zeta Master Gearhead will always be worth it. I definitely swear by it, especially when going droids. And I've even seen people go General Grievous on defense. And then instead of using the B2, they used T3. And that was much more difficult for me to kill than it was when it had the B2. The B2 seemed to be a good turn meter thing if they had the Zeta, but T3 made it much more defensible. So something to consider definitely after Chirpa, I would consider the T3 Master Gearhead. The last two come out of your first row, and you can see you've got Jedi Knight Rev and his 3 Zetas, but you don't have Jedi Training Rey or Commander Luke's Zetas. You have 2 of their 3, and I know that that you've got their leaders, and you've got Insight, which was considered the best for her, but Virtuous Protector is a great Zeta. I honestly feel like you should finish them off. You've got his leader, you've got his It Binds. It's the same thing. Learn Control was one of the lesser of the Zetas. It was the 3rd in the priority. And in the past, you had said, no, there's better Zetas out there like Mission or Zalbar or someone cool. Well, now is the time that you're developed so greatly that these little Zetas are going to make a big difference at the highest in gameplay. And it's time. These 2 characters both deserve this 3rd Zeta. They're not absolutely required, but when you have virtually all of the important Zetas in the game, it comes down to now finishing off those characters and giving them that little bit of competitive edge you don't currently have by finishing them off. So I would do Rey's 3rd Zeta and CLS's 3rd Zeta as well. The rest of it looks great, but Chirpa, T3, CLS, and JTR, I think those 4 Zetas are going to be big, and the 11 characters I talked about will really round your roster off. Once you do those 4 Zetas and those characters, to be completely frank, you're pretty much done with everything. You can kind of sit back and start to really hoard everything for the next potential meta or the next ship situation coming down the road. So make sure that you do that. Obviously, you'll want to keep working on Gear 12 and Gear 12 Plus for characters such as HK47 and whatnot. So Habusakii, I hope that this kind of gives you a priority list of which crew members, which normal characters, and which Zetas you should be focused on. Hopefully you were in alignment with me on most of it, and if not, hopefully this gives you something to think about. And as always, brother, I appreciate you pulling your weight in Team Instinct, and as I always say, keep your gaming on. Warrior, out.